Now, anyone who spent any time on an expat forum on the internet or in a bar has heard stories about how a guy has gotten taken for a ride, whether it's for money or a green card. Some of these stories may be true, but many are exaggerations at best. As someone who works with visas for a living, I'm pretty knowledgeable about US immigration law. So I thought I'd address some of these stories that I've heard because frankly, most of them are exaggerations at best, and that's being generous. Story 1. The guy brings the girl over to the US. She tricked him into bringing her cousin over. It turned out that that cousin was her real boyfriend, and they ended up having an affair while he was at work. I call BS on this story. First of all, he couldn't bring her cousin or even her boyfriend over. A US citizen may only petition a romantic partner or a relative to come to the US. Some random guy in the Philippines would have no legal connection to the US citizen. She wouldn't be able to petition him either, since the Immigration and Nationality Act, the INA, which is the foundation of US immigration law, states that a green card holder may only sponsor their spouse or unmarried children. So she wouldn't be able to sponsor her boyfriend since she has no legal ties to him. Even if she divorced the US husband, both the INA and the Code of Federal Regulations would get in her way. The CFR specifically states that, and I quote, a K-1 non-immigrant visa is available to the fiancé of a U.S. citizen provided the petitioner demonstrates their intent to marry within 90 days of the fiancé's arrival. This means she wouldn't be able to file a fiancé petition for her new or old boyfriend, rather. If she tried to marry the guy and file a spousal petition, that would play right into her American ex's hands to prove that she committed marriage fraud. There's just so many holes with this story that I can make an entire video on everything that's wrong with it. Story 2. He brought her over, she divorced him, got the house and everything he owned except for the shirt off his back. Oh, and plus the kids. Okay, so in most states, the way community property laws work, the ex-spouse gets half of the marital assets. That means if the house was acquired before the marriage, she probably wouldn't be entitled to it. Plus, filing for divorce shortly after a green card looks suspicious as hell. As for the kids, in the past, courts were extremely biased against men and fathers, often operating under the archaic belief that the mother would automatically be the better parent. However, due to the diligent work of men's and fathers' rights groups, things have improved. Most divorces now result in joint custody. More importantly, if you can prove that marriage fraud took place, you can file for an annulment instead of a divorce. That means it's as if the marriage never happened and she gets nothing. So my verdict, highly unlikely. Story 3. He brought her over, then she filed a false Violence Against Women Act VAWA petition to get out of the 2-year waiting period. My verdict, maybe, but rare. Now, the VAWA does state that, so it's true, she doesn't need physical evidence or proof that abuse occurred, like bumps or bruises. But the burden of proof is still high. The law does state that she has to provide credible evidence that the abuse occurred. Credibility is assessed on a case-by-case basis, and the burden of proof remains on the petitioner to convince the USCIS. So what constitutes credible evidence? Things like personal affidavits, statements from witnesses, friends, family, clergy, or community members, counseling or therapy notes, text messages, emails, or photos, police or medical records if available, but not mandatory. The United States Customs and Immigration Service, or USCIS, evaluates these petitions carefully. If they find that claims were fabricated or even exaggerated, the case is likely to fail, as the evidence would not meet the high standard required by the USCIS. So no, it wouldn't be enough for just some feminist therapist to sign off that she was abused. First of all, if that feminist therapist were to lie, she could lose her license. Having a shouting match won't cut it. Like any law, there are a few fraudulent claims that get through, but overall, this just doesn't happen. I know there are immigration lawyers on YouTube who say that they can get these petitions through, but just remember, they're trying to sell something, their services. So they have an incentive to overstate the ease of getting a VAWA petition through. Just to put it into perspective, in the fiscal year of 2022, nearly 500,000 fiancé and spousal visas were granted, and only about 8,000 VAWA petitions were approved. Lastly, if a woman files a false VAWA petition and gets caught, she could be deported and face a bar from ever coming back to the US. On top of that, VAWA petitions take about 28 months to process, which means she would be better off just waiting the 2-year waiting period out. So you see, this mostly just doesn't happen very often. Now I want to tell you about a story where the man won. A Filipino doctor wanted to practice medicine in the US but couldn't find a sponsor for her J1 visa. She married an older man who, quite frankly, was 3 donuts short of a heart attack, and promptly divorced him after she got her green card and her medical license. Since she was the higher earning spouse, she ended up having to pay him alimony. He now lives a very comfortable life in Panglao. The only downside is that he can't marry his new girlfriend as he would lose his alimony, which is how I met him. He was trying to get her a visa to the US. Just remember that bad news travels fast, and most people don't tell the whole story. When it comes to relationship breaks, there's usually 3 sides to every story. Her side, his side, and the truth. Honestly speaking, most of us know if our partner truly cares for us. It's just that some of us make excuses to hide from the truth. The biggest takeaway is just to be careful about who you marry. Having a C cup is not enough. A fiancé visa isn't supposed to be a let's get married and see how it goes visa. It's supposed to be we love each other and want to spend the rest of our lives together visa. When you're dating a woman of any nationality, watch out for signs of entitlement and victimhood. An example of entitlement would be she's disappointed because you didn't take her to an expensive restaurant on the first date. An example of victimhood would be that she doesn't get along with anybody and it's always the other person's fault. So I hope that this provides some clarification and to make you feel a little bit better and more at ease about helping your partner, the person you love, to get to the US. If you have any questions, my name is Cameron. You can book a consultation at busybodywisa.com. Thank you very much. God bless.